Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. Poland is set to appoint Piotr Łukasiewicz as its new ambassador to Ukraine on September 1st, replacing Jaroslaw Guzy. Now, Łukasiewicz, a former ambassador to Afghanistan and a seasoned diplomat, takes on this role at a critical time for Polish-Ukrainian relations amid ongoing conflict with Russia. As Poland remains a key ally of Ukraine, this diplomatic shift raises questions about the future of their partnership. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss what this change could mean for both nations is Taras Kuzio, a professor of political science at National University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me.
So, can you tell us how significant this new appointment is as Poland's new ambassador to Ukraine in the current geopolitical context?
Well, I think it is certainly significant, but I think we should not underestimate that Polish-Ukrainian relations have been positive for the last 30 years, at least since the 1980s, when the Polish solidarity and opposition movement came to power. I've never believed that these positive relations would ever be under threat, even prior to Russia's military aggression against Ukraine, because there was already so much work invested in maintaining these good relations between both countries, who, of course, have had a long history of conflict, but also of coexistence as well.
Right. Well, bipartisanship is a key word here when it comes to in support of Ukraine. So fortunately, that's something that we might not see deteriorating when it comes to the relation between the two countries. Given Łukasiewicz's military background, do you think that might actually give the Ukraine legs up when it comes to dealing with Poland?
Well, certainly this is important in terms of developing military cooperation. Ukraine is building ties to many countries with the idea of building joint military production. Poland gets as much out of this as Ukraine does, because many countries in NATO are watching how Ukraine is fighting this war. What are the lessons for reforming NATO armies? What are the areas that NATO armies should be investing in? I mean, this is a brand new 21st century war, probably the first drone war in history. So both countries will get something out of this. And also, I'm sure Ukraine is looking at this as well as a potential way to cement Polish support for Ukraine's lobbying to join NATO, because Poland is a strong member of that as well. And maybe looking towards the future, seeing who will be the next US president next year. And this is, I mean, Poland, of all the East European countries, many of them are supporting Ukraine, the Baltic states, Romania as well, Czech Republic, but of course Poland is the biggest of these East European countries.
All right, so when it comes to coordinating between Poland and NATO allies in supporting Ukraine, do you see any challenges coming up for Mr. Łukasiewicz and his new position?
Well, the big challenge, I think, is this perennial division within the Western alliance over what to do with this war. Most countries in the sort of Central Eastern Europe, like Poland, have the same view as Ukraine, that Ukraine should be given as much as it can be given militarily and without any restrictions, so that the war could be quickly ended, so that Russia could be quickly defeated. That is not the view of the Germans and the United States, of course, the two big countries in NATO, who are afraid of always what they call escalation, and therefore have drip-fed, very slowly, military aid, given many restrictions on what this aid can do. So you cannot fire long-range missiles into Russia. Germany has still not supplied any of these long-range missiles that it produces. So that kind of approach from the Germans and the Americans, who do not see their goal as Russia's military defeat, will lead to a never-ending war, a continuous, long, drawn-out war, which is not in the interests of Ukraine and the Ukrainian people, because it just leads to more destruction, more death, and it's not in the interests of Poland and the East European countries, who want a return to some kind of stability and calm and peace in this part of the world.
Right, I think we do all want to see common peace in this part of the world. Unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case, which draws us to our next topic. I want to take a little bit of a different direction because we just got news not long ago that 4 journalists have actually been injured in a Russian missile strike on a Krematorsk hotel. Now, these journalists are being from various different nationalities. What do you think the implication is that going forward?
Sadly, I don't think it'll have many implications because Western countries have been very weak in approaching Russia on these kinds of questions. It's not the first time Western journalists are killed or wounded by Russian attacks. Russia is launching huge numbers of attacks. The number of missiles and Iranian drones that Russia is firing is just mind-boggling. And yet the West has been very slow in supplying air defense equipment, very slow in supplying the means for Ukraine to counterattack. So sadly, I don't see how this will have some kind of major impact. Of course, there will be diplomatic protests, but nothing much more. Germany, which was until recently the second largest supplier of military aid to Ukraine. The finance ministry in Germany has said just a few weeks ago that from next year, Germany will no longer provide Ukraine with military aid. So I somehow doubt that this will have much of an impact. Sadly, that's the case.
Where's the hesitancy coming from? We do see that these journalists are actually coming from places like Germany, United States. Normally, you would expect the world leaders to be outraged.
Well, they're going to be outraged, of course. They're going to have diplomatic protests, but that's, Putin and Russian leaders will just laugh at this. This is not important. These kinds of criminal leaders only respect strength, brute strength, and that will require some kind of more tougher response. There are many different things that could be done. For example, Germany is a major problem with the breaking of Western sanctions to Russia. Germany exports huge amounts of goods to places like Armenia, Georgia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and these goods are then re-exported to Russia. This is all known to everybody. Germany knows it's not exporting all these goods to Armenia because it's too small a country to take all these goods. These goods are obviously going to Russia and helping Russia to break the Western sanctions. So that's just one area that, for example, Germany could tighten up, but it's not. So sadly, I think we continue to project this weak image of ourselves as a Western alliance to Russia, and Russia only respects brute strength. Just like China. They only respect strength. They don't respect weakness. So we're kind of helping Ukraine with only partially, only with one foot. We're not helping Ukraine with the full attempt to defeat Russia. I think the reason for this is this fear of what will come if Russia is defeated. What will happen? Will Russia disintegrate? What will happen if a country with nuclear weapons will disintegrate? So that entire fear of some kind of potential knock-on, which would lead to a war between NATO, Russia, or disintegration of Russia. Those are the kinds of fears that are taking place. The bigger fear should be that this long drawn-out war will be costly in lives, in money, and in soldiers. If Ukraine is militarily defeated, then there will be direct war between NATO and Russia. So right. Ukraine is the things preventing that.
Last but not least, before we let you go, there's also another alarming situation. We see Belarus now gathering military personnel on the Ukrainian border. Is there something that we need to be alarmed by, or do you think Lukashenko is once again just kind of saber rattling, trying to get some attention and divert some attention?
Well, I think it is. He's been given instructions by Moscow because he's a puppet. I hope that he tries something stupid. I don't think he will, because the Belarusian army is even more of a joke than the Russian army. So, I mean, and most Belarusians do not support Lukashenko's regime. So I hope that he will try something stupid and militarily, because his regime would collapse very quickly. Ukraine would strike the main military bases in Belarus. Ukraine has supported 2 Belarusian volunteer battalions who would probably enter Belarus and destroy the 2 main forces that prop up the Lukashenko regime, which are the KGB, the security service, still called the KGB, and this OMON riot police. Those are the 2 main forces. The Belarusian army is a conscript army. It would surrender en masse to the Ukrainians. So I hope Lukashenko does something stupid, because it would be the end of his regime.
All right. Thank you so much for your input and insight and helping us dissecting this issue. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And meanwhile, thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.